Hello to everybody, to Brazil, from Czech Republic. My name is Jindřicha Voboril. I used to be a national drug coordinator for many years in Czech Republic, but I came from the clinician background, treating people with addiction problem. 2013, we were the first government which was actually putting together a single legislation on cannabis, especially the use of cannabis rich with THC for medical purposes. Since that time, many countries opened the door and started changing the legislation. Of course, hemp industry started booming, but we're still a little bit stuck in the middle. At this moment, I'm representing an institute with abbreviations called ICCI, International Cannabis and Cannabinoid Institute. It's an institute that is involved in research, auditing companies, consultation, and regulatory role. My personal role, I work in a non-profit part of this organization, consulting governments. I would like to speak about the international dynamics of cannabis and hemp. Well, it is one plant. It's not hemp. It's not different to cannabis. We only have one plant, rich with THC or not rich with THC, but it's still one plant. Because of the international conventions, we have several plants heavily regulated under international regulations. It's coca leaf, it's ephedra, poppy, and of course cannabis and a few others. But among which cannabis is actually the one most regulated. What is the reason? It's just myths. It's beliefs. It's not a real need for it. But we still maintain this strict regulation. Even though we found we have a lot of findings now how cannabis can be used for medical purposes. We have hemp industry growing in new possibilities with extracts such as CBD. We still have cannabis under the international conventions restricted as a plant which has no medical use. I know there's been a big debate that the WHO, World Health Organization, did its review and proposed to member states of UN to change the position of cannabis, but it's only a proposal. WHO doesn't have the power to actually change it. It has to be voted once a year, usually in March, in level of CND. But what's happening is that the proposal of the WHO came in time that we had possibility to vote already last year to so-called reschedule cannabis to different list of plants which have medical use, but it hasn't happened. Why? Because many countries are against it, and the way it's organized with the international control, it has to be voted by majority in the Commission for Narcotic Drugs, CND. So we still have this plant heavily regulated, more than poppy, more than ephedra, under the Convention for Narcotic Drugs from 1961. At that time, countries called war on drugs, and this plant is unnecessarily put under the list of drugs which are going to be the most severely prohibited. So we are in the prohibition time, and we will still remain for some time in the prohibition time. In the meantime, the war on drugs cost us $100 billion every year. We said to 1998 that there is going to be world free of drugs by 2008. Now, from that time, the world drug problem doubled. We have today 270 million people use drugs daily worldwide, contributing to the global market with a turnover of 330 billion a year, which is a black market. The war is not winnable. 1 of 10 million people in prison are for simple possession, out of which the most common drug for which people are in prison for possession is cannabis. So we're still there. We're still in the drug war. There are patches in the world where we kind of little bit liberalized policy. Uruguay, Canada, many countries in European Union already adopted the law on medical use of cannabis, but under the international view and under international control, we still are in the prohibition time, which also affects the hemp industry, not only the industry of medical cannabis, because that plant is heavily stigmatized. What can we do? Actually, 2016 United Nations General Assembly special session, after several years of negotiations, came out with UNGA's outcome document, which kind of marked a new start, but still within the framework of 3 international drug control conventions. In my personal opinion, after working as a national drug coordinator, the conventions are outdated unless we bring amendments or bring new conventions. These conventions are more harmful than helpful, but we still want to remain with those conventions. We need to say why. Because this is one of the few conventions in the whole history of UN where all countries signed in, especially 1961, in the pitch of the Cold War. So nobody wants to change it. So if we think that this is only bringing evidence about how drugs policy should work and what we should actually change, this is not that easy, because the dynamics are far beyond drugs itself. At the same time, we have several criminal governments which are involved directly in the black market of production and distribution of different kinds of drugs, such as heroin, cocaine, and other drugs, of course, methamphetamine, new synthetic drugs. I don't need to name those countries. We all know it. We just don't want to speak about it. And these are usually the countries which shout the loudest that we need to maintain prohibition. So the whole dynamic is very difficult, and yes, we are waiting this house of cards fall at some point, but it's not going to be as soon as we believe. Yes, WHO brought the new recommendation on rescheduling cannabis. It's one way forward, and we believe that under this pressure of all the evidence, we will move forward next CND in March. We have to put pressure on individual governments because the member states are the ones that can change it. It doesn't come up from WHO, it doesn't come as a decision of UNODC. It has to be the member states pressurizing it. Other way forward, I know that the hemp industry doesn't like the European decision on novelty food, but actually this is a way forward. I think it's a good news, it's not a bad news. Yes, all industries that aim at selling CBD extracts, food supplements, etc. to European Union are in front of the decision to invest a lot of money in registering those new products. But at the same time, as a person who was on the bureaucratic side, I understand that this is actually the only way forward, because if we regulate cannabis products, hemp products, on the market level, nobody will ever take it away. So it's an opportunity, and I would want to recommend and encourage everybody to think this way, instead of thinking we have to put pressure on European Commission to rethink and not to think that the CBD is a new kind of a product on the food market. I think actually if we want to make it normalize, we have to regulate on the market level, because one of the bases of European Union, which is 28 countries at this moment, 500 billion people, this basis of the European Union are based on free market. Medicines are exempt from it, so if we think of medical cannabis, it's more complicated because it's to the individual member states. But if we think of food and we accept that novelty food is going to take us through the process of registration, then the market will work and nobody will ever stop it anymore. I will show you a table of ICCI services. Of course, some of the services are for medical doctors. We do training for medical doctors. I think for industries it's good to know that we can help in individual countries with the training of medical doctors. Our training is non-profit driven project, but when the medical doctors want international certificates, they will have to pay for it. We can help with investors, putting people in network with investments. We also do other non-profit projects like consulting governments. At the same time, what we do, we can help with evaluating companies if they are in line with GMP and agriculture standards. At the same time, we can help industries to look at the new registration of the novelty food and help to think of the best strategy, which will cost them the minimum money and will help them to establish in the European market. I want to congratulate Brazil by taking the bold steps in decriminalizing possession for personal use of illegal drugs and allowing cannabis to be used for medical purposes. I think Brazil can be the lead and we can all benefit from it. Here is my contact if you want to email me or have some more information about what we do and what we can help with, or if you want us to come to speak to your government, contact me on this email. Thank you for your attention.